This is not a movie you see. This is a movie you survive. Well, that's one way to put it. Traumatika was written and directed by Pierre Sagardis, I hope I pronounced that name correctly, and written by Maxime Rancon, and comes to us from Saban Films, and is about a boy named Mikey that senses something is wrong with his mother. She's exhibiting signs of trauma, terror, and demonic possession. You know, as you do when you have, Mikey, he likes it. Hey, Mikey! So yeah, that's about the only spoiler-free premise I can give. This film got a bit of attention as far as the trailer going around. We can't show you what's actually going on. You just have to go see it. We can talk a little bit about it, but we just show you images and Traumatika. And also, if you've seen the poster, you see something that almost looks like a weird gargoyle-like thing. Or like the creature at the end, of Limbo of the Lost. If you've seen that game or seen any footage or played that game, unfortunately, then you know what I'm talking about. That is about it. Look, the budget was low. The body horror effects weren't that bad. I think the cast did the best they could. And I think the filmmakers certainly have some talent, but this movie is dumb as hell. This is one of the worst goddamn things that I have seen all year. It still won't crack my top 20, but it's so goddamn disappointing with the idea of using, the theme of abuse, creating horror and manifesting inside us and causing so many issues is something that it's familiar. In fact, a lot of this is familiar to most, halfway seasoned horror buffs. But even if you're a casual horror fan, I don't know how you can necessarily find this thing scary. And there were people talking about how the narrative was all over the place. Okay, there were bops back and forth in time. And it's only an 80-minute long movie with some questionable decisions to introduce fucking characters with just a few minutes left. That was certainly a choice. Not a good choice, but I digress. But there are parts to this that could have worked, but this feels much like just some scenes stitched together with a very loose, paper-thin narrative, and the theme of abuse, forms of abuse, taking, home in us, and creating just this, bile and this anger and this rage and this darkness in our souls. But the movie doesn't explore that. It just simply throws stuff out there. And even when it tries to go on a bit of a straight path towards the end, by then that thing has basically veered into a fucking wall and then kept hitting the fucking wall until it's nothing but goddamn powderized stuff. And then you're just looking like, lad, you could have stopped running into that wall a little bit ago. Well, okay, whatever. Felt like running my head into a wall while watching this. And I rented this, by the way. I don't pirate movies. I rent stuff, so I threw a few bucks towards it. That's why I feel at least I can knock this thing more than some people that will just pirate stuff. At least I want to support the filmmakers in a little bit of a way. While I don't think the acting is terrible, and again, I don't think that the filmmakers necessarily set out to make a movie that was terrible, it just ends up being something that's few ideas stitched together and really is just a series of increasingly annoying, themes. Even when it tries to go for an ending that might be seen as, oh my god, it doesn't really work. It really doesn't need to pick a focus and stick with it. Because otherwise, a hodgepodge of things doesn't really end up, I think, accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. I'm going to get into spoilers on Amazon for a few bucks if you want to check it out. So yeah, 3, 2, 1, Traumatika sucks, spoilers. There you go. I just really wanted to say that right at the end. So we get 5 signs of childhood trauma. We get physical neglect, S abuse, SA, that's really all I can say, emotional, physical, and witnessing violence. And then we go to Egypt, where in 1910 we have a guy that's carrying a weird artifact. It turns out to be Pazu. I kept wanting to call it Pazuzu. Professor, this ship can go half the speed of light. Why are we going 35 miles an hour? Because we're in a hurry, damn it. So there's this weird thing that almost looks like it could be a cocaine dish straight out of Gino Hernandez's apartment. If you get that, I love you guys. And nice costume foam stabbing there. Seriously. Again, I know that the budget was probably small, but I'm sorry. That was glaringly bad. So anyway, we go to 2003. Mikey calls 911. His mommy's acting weird. These jump scares are ass, is what I noted. Now is where things get mean. Again, I know what they were trying to do, but this was terrible. And when a movie is terrible, and especially when I pay some money for it, I feel like I should at least get some entertainment out of it. No, that's not what I got here. The camera work was a little bit janky. I thought maybe they were trying to show it from the kids' perspective, and then maybe I thought, nope, they're just going to throw the camera around for a little bit, and then a sheriff shows up, and a sheriff basically spouts some dialogue that was so nauseatingly stupid, I was amazed. It says, I will fucking smoke you. Don't you jump out at me. Don't you do that. Don't you... Who talks like this? Was it meant to... If it was meant to be comedic, it wasn't funny. So, the sheriff ends up dying. By the way, this is about the first 20 minutes of the fucking movie. We see this one woman that is... That woman, by the way, was Abigail, played by Rebecca Kennedy. I recognize the name. I swear I've seen her in some projects, but... So, the sheriff ends up getting killed in the basement and goes almost full Daffy Duck with his goddamn, screaming there. And then we go to 1 year earlier. What is this? The Time Jump Olympics. So, we have a guy named John. Man, the guys named John are just weird. Hey! But anyway, in all seriousness, this guy is calling his soon-to-be ex-wife. You'll find out why soon-to-be. And he has an Egyptian sphinxter thing. I think the guy that was originally in that Got Milk ad that ended up being in Twister. I don't remember the guy's name offhand. He was in this in a brief role. I swear that was the guy. If not, he's got a twin. And you can't open this artifact thing, the artifact thing from the 1910 Egypt thing that looked like it was filmed in like a sand pit in Arizona. You can't open it around children because it preys on children. For reasons. So, he doesn't open it, then he opens it. And, well, let's just say, Abigail, the young lady from before that had the boy Mikey, that killed the sheriff, by the way, or something killed the sheriff, and the full Daffy Duck screaming. It turns out she is the daughter of John and is a bit, creeped out sitting near him. I wonder if you can guess where I'm going with this. Yeah, it's that kind of abuse. I mean, they don't really show anything, but they show enough where I'm like, all right, I mean, I get it. And I get what narrative they were trying to go with, but it didn't work. He said, don't tell anybody, the monster might come out. So, it's a series of trauma scenes which might have worked if I cared about any of these characters. I mean, no child deserves that. Nobody deserves that. But especially no child deserves that. So she goes off into an area of realizing that she's pregnant by her own father. And, doesn't listen to Faye Dunaway and Mommy's Dearest. If you get it, you get it. And now doesn't have the kid anymore. Body horror effects are decent, is what I noted. And essentially, he was doing that because he's possessed by whatever this is. Well, I mean, I actually, to be perfectly honest, think he'd been doing that anyway. This just made it worse. And he basically said, you were supposed to sire him a son, but you fucked it up. You're supposed to be his handmaid. Whatever. So, you gotta find another little boy because this happened. And now we see, and by the way, a year earlier and all this stuff, we see a girl babysitting. Kid wanders off into some caves that just happen to be over here. Caves or some kind of theme park thing. And Azteca, I don't know where the fuck this is. And, yeah, that basically ends up happening. So, not really much there in that scene. We go back to the screaming Daffy Duck dead sheriff. I'm sorry, mister, I didn't mean to do that. And Mikey's a little bit concerned, but also traumatized. In a film called Traumatika, you don't say. And Abigail basically had called her sister, apologized, said, don't come looking for me. Don't say, I need to go to the church. I need to do some stuff. And then she took care of the kids and all this. And in front of Mikey, she ends up basically taking her own life. Pulling a Chris Von Erich, if you get it. And Mikey, well, he's not doing too well. He kind of, ends up shooting the creature, I think, but it's so badly edited, you don't care. And now the father is upset, realizing, oh yeah, probably shouldn't have done that to my own kid, and boom, he ends up just pulling a Brian Cox from the ring, ends up shocking himself in the bathtub. At least I think that's what Brian Cox ended up doing. Now we go to 20 years later. I still might like this more than 28 years later. I kid, of course. They're doing 2 more of those. They're doing 2 more. 28 later. Why? So anyway, adult Alice, played by, who the hell plays it? Emily Goss, which I recognize her to an extent. I recognize the name. She probably wasn't anything remarkably memorable, obviously, but good on her for, getting featured in more projects, and hopefully her career succeeds. She's on a talk show about trauma, and that Mikey wasn't doing all that well, and even his own mother in interviews is like he's just drawing monsters, he's just doing all this stuff, and it's so scary. It's not scary. It would be scary to see your child go through that. The movie just doesn't touch on any of that. Probably should have chosen a different word, but you get the point. And essentially Mikey has Stockholm Syndrome. He identified with Abigail being his mother because he'd been there for a number of months. I guess. They had talked about kids being missing for a number of months and all that, but I don't really necessarily care. There were bodies in the basements of the other children. And Mikey ends up showing up during Halloween, because it's Halloween now, because why the fuck wouldn't it be Halloween? Alice is pissed about how her name and everything and the trauma of her sister and death of her sister is being used for ratings by this older woman, Jennifer. She's not ancient. She's not rotting away. But she's just, basically like TMZ, but without TMZ doesn't really have a soul. But Mikey ends up showing up and saying, hey, you're not safe anymore. I don't want to be the chosen one. Because, he needed this creature, Vol Pazuzu. I know what he's called, but I don't care because this movie doesn't deserve my respect. He ends up basically saying, I don't want to be the chosen one. I don't want to do this. And he's been killing people. For reasons. For reasons going on, just for whatever. I don't fucking care. Sorry I brought it here. And the monster is here. By the way, her ex shows up. Alice's ex shows up. We have 10 minutes left of this movie, and we are introducing new characters. That is a filmmaking faux pas that needs to stop. And that's happened in Tubi originals and in other slop I've watched. But this seemed to have people that tried to put in effort, so I don't know what the fuck they're actually thinking. But that being said, let's finish up this goddamn review. He dies because Mikey ends up killing him. And then I noted that Jennifer seemed to be driving a Tesla. I'm shocked this movie could afford a Tesla. I'm trying not to be mean, but I'm sorry. This movie is dog shit. Mikey shows up. He's killed everybody, by the way. Jennifer's on set. She had talked to her own assistant, Jen, I think. I thought I might have recognized the actress playing her. But this is the very end of this. Because Mikey wanted Alice to be his new mommy. Whatever. You have your own mom, but okay. Can't associate with her anymore. And instead of trying to save her assistant as well because she's got a taser, she throws something over there and lets her assistant get shot, and then basically goes into her goes and tases Mikey, which she could have done and saved her, but she's greedy, I guess. I don't know. She goes to her office to make a call, and Mikey shows back up, is about to stab her. Alice says, don't worry, I'll be your new mommy. This is if you have role-playing stuff like that, you need help. And then, basically, Mikey gets stabbed in the goddamn face by Jennifer. And then she says, oh, are you ready do you want to have another interview? Oh, and the artifact's still there. There was a mid-credits scene in this movie. This This movie didn't even deserve to have credits as far as I'm concerned. I'll give it no credit. F. It's terrible. Traumatika is terrible. Sorry. Sorry to anybody watching this if you worked on it and you happen to find offense with that, because I don't wish your careers go down the toilet. Quite the opposite. Do whatever you want. Go and do bigger and better projects. But when a movie is bad, it has to be called bad. So yeah, F. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rittland. Until we revisit Trauma Drama again, happy trails to you.